We're back on Global TV. Our special guest today, again, is Angie Weinberger in Zurich, Switzerland. Welcome again.
Hello, Ed. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for being with me and being a press club member. So I'm in a big drive, a big membership drive to try to get more members during June. And so you'll be seeing a lot of that PR.
Mm-hmm. I think that makes a lot of sense because it's getting summer and people have more time, hopefully.
You think?
to think about the PR.
Yeah, they should.
And find their, as we established already, PR shrink. Now, what was it? TV shrink.
So we're going to talk today about the issues connected with being an expat, or is it spouse or partner?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's talk a bit more about why it is really a topic that I think needs more attention in global mobility. So I think I have two angles. First of all, there's the story of the expat partner. Like, let's call her Heidi for argument's sake. And she probably had a career in New York City, studied in London, moved to New York, had a career as a director in banking. And then her husband got a job offer in the Middle East. And because she's pregnant, she thinks, okay, I will just tag along this time. But this is a woman who always worked. So she's like, her identity is around having a career. And so if the new company of the husband doesn't support her in any way, she will at some stage sit at home and be very bored and disappointed. So I think that's sort of the one angle where, I think we need to help expat partners, but especially also we need to help women in global mobility a bit more. So the other angle is, we have more and more, we need to help female expats, where I think we could think about somebody like Aisha, for example, who lived and worked most of her life in Mumbai, for example, and she's interested in moving to France. And what can we do, to make sure that Aisha actually has a chance to move to France? How can we support her? I think these are the two stories that I thought are somehow connected. And I think they don't get enough attention in the global mobility world at the moment.
So I'm a guy, I'm sitting here in California, a long way from you. And yet here we are in simpatico of the issue. And it's a little crazy making to me that the companies are investing so much money in the transfer.
Mm-hmm.
And until recently, they don't want to even know about the family. They don't want to get involved in personal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yet the logicality of all that, the logic of thinking in that old-fashioned way is not only narrow, but it's also stupid because there's going to be problems. And all they have to do is to understand that there are others in the market who have the exact same problem, and why not just bring them together in a club or a lunch and show that we care, or establish a network.
Yeah, and Ed, don't forget, one of the things that is very important to understand at the moment is most of our, let's say, traffic is no longer 1 3-year assignment to Dubai and back. Most of our traffic now is one-way transfers. So, what we sometimes call in global mobility, local to local transfer, international transfer, local plus. We use different terms for the same thing. And then if you think about that, in the Middle East, the person who's actually hiring Heidi's husband is probably an HR professional or even a recruiter. They do not really understand mobility the way we do. So they not only have many mobility professionals, no empathy, for the family. But an HR professional or somebody who's always been in a more like remote position to mobility, they don't really understand the importance of looking at the family and bringing the family on board.
When
So
you
they're not
say,
even to blame at the end of the
yeah,
day. Yeah.
when you say one way,
Mhm.
does that mean the company who shipped them over to that assignment, they'll bring them back, pay for the trip back, but there may not be a job?
Depends. I would say, this is one of the things that I think I have an interview on repatriation. But one of the things I advise people to check if they decide to go on such an like local to local transfer, accept a local plus package, they at least get the return move and maybe a redundancy package paid. Because usually if for example, in this case, let's say, this husband, I call him Govind, he gets his job, and after 3 years he loses the job. There's no security whatsoever for him and his family. And then, you have the unemployed spouse Heidi at home, who in the US would have easily found a job again in another bank, and now, has been out of the job market for 3 years. So even if they return now, it is going to be a lot harder for her to find a job than it was before.
So
I don't want to sound negative, but I think, it's important that we tell people these things, that they're not naive when they move to another country.
So the solution is some kind of a counselor like you, but of course, but for people to be aware that this is a probability.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that they have to take it upon themselves, the expat, to almost immediately network their way through and find a new job for themselves down the road, potentially.
Yeah. So one of the things, I think is important in either case, the expat partner, the female expat, the minority expat, the expat from the LGBTQ plus community, everybody needs to understand that they own their career and that they're responsible to make sure that after a 3-year stint, they have the next thing lined up. I mean, the only thing is, if they were in their home country, they would probably get the job market and understand all the legal implications. In another country, they might not do that. They might not fully understand the scope. Or, another thing people might not understand is many countries, the employment permit depends on the job, having a job in that company. So you cannot just move to another employer, and that is something people sometimes don't think about. And then, one of the things I hear a lot is, well, people should just do their research. And yes, people can do their research, but you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what to look for. If you don't know these kind of things, you don't really know what to look for.
Interesting. So at the recent London event, you spoke of this topic to some extent, and the isolation and the mental health of the partner spouse, and how that is a giant risk that has, until recently, been swept under the rug, kept quiet.
Yeah. I think one of the things that maybe is underestimated is how important a job is for somebody's identity. And identity and mental health are very closely connected. So, if you lose a really important part of your identity, it sometimes can be as bad as losing a leg, for example. So imagine, you always have been in banking, this has been your professional career for 20 years, and now suddenly for the first time in your life, you're unemployed. Yes, it's nice to be a mom and have a bit of time with your kids for a change, but it's not a long-term solution. So companies need to accept that there are dual career couples now, that there are same-sex couples right now, that families come together in different constellations, that in some cultures, the grandparents, the parents, the in-laws are part of the family construct, and they need to think about that in their assignment guidelines or their recruiting guidelines. I'm explicitly also mentioning recruiting now because I sometimes think, we talk about global mobility, but a lot of the issues, they come up in decisions that local HR business partners or HR managers or recruiters take, not only in things global mobility managers can influence.
Do you give workshops to corporate managers, not just to expats, but to corporate managers?
Mm-hmm.
Is that in person or virtual?
So, we have all sorts of possibilities to work with, for example, global mobility teams, global mobility managers. I could, for example, facilitate a team workshop or training or learning opportunities. There's a very good course in Holland. A lot of global mobility managers go to for, further education. And I think, sometimes it's more to have somebody to talk to who understands where they are coming from, but also the willingness to be more inclusive. And I think that willingness starts with every one of us to include more diverse perspective, to include more different people, to basically include people on the mental health spectrum. You and I, we have talked about this a lot, that sometimes it's just not only the awareness is missing, it's also people sometimes are just not willing to consider that, for example, someone who is in a wheelchair can't do the same things, like go to an event, for example, if there's no elevator. So, sometimes we just need to think a bit better about being more inclusive.
Interesting. It's just being human.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever told you that, but one of the first assignees I dealt with in my life was actually in a wheelchair. And, a lot of people were commenting on, how's she's going to do that? But she was so well adapted and she had a partner who was fully supportive. Okay, it helped that they both worked for the same company, so we could send them both. Yeah. But I think, for her, it was such a rewarding experience to have had that opportunity. And we never ever doubted, that she was able to do this. But it required a bit of adjustment. For example, in the elevator, the office, the chair size, the table size that she was supposed to be at. And I would say in hindsight, I'm still very proud that I helped her achieve that at the time. It's a long time ago. I'm that old.
Well, it's good to have all this conversation. So people with disabilities, it's a big business, the servicing of that. And, companies that hire the disabled and who are trainable to do something or to do a lot, depends on what the disability is. They're very motivated, productive people.
Absolutely. Can I just come back to the other female expat topic, that I think is important as well. So, as I mentioned earlier, when we think about somebody called Aisha, a professional programmer, for example, working in Mumbai, she wants to move to France. What often would happen is that her manager wouldn't even consider her for an assignment because, they would make assumptions about her personal life. And then instead of asking her and instead of talking to her, she would not even, get a chance to be considered for the assignment. So also here, I think companies can do so much more when looking at their talent pool, when selecting talent. They can be more objective. And in that case, especially, I think they also just need to, a lot of managers need to also work on their unconscious biases that they have.
Interesting. So what do you recommend to corporate corporate contacts to
Okay,
just to bring awareness of it?
No, this might not sound like something you would normally hear me say, but when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think the only thing that helps are numbers, facts and figures. So, one of the first things that you need to do as a global mobility manager, if you want to think about this a bit more strategically, is establish a metric. Clear data. Like, for example, okay, in the next 2 years, we want to have 25 to 30% of women plus 10% minorities plus X people from the LGBTQ community. We want to have, quotas for these target groups and communities, because otherwise nothing is ever going to change. And, for spousal support, this is even harder to measure. But one of the first things that you could do as a global mobility manager is bring in the question in your, regular surveys, because most companies have a global mobility survey, and ask what would help you, your partner, and your family, or what would have helped you, your partner and your family, in terms of adjusting to the host country. Would spouse career support have been a good option? If yes, what kind of ideas would you have to make it better for the next person? So really ask the expats and the partners what they would have, liked to have if you don't do that right now, and then come up with a plan for the future.
So you're on a mission.
Yeah, I'm on a mission.
No, this is like serious stuff for you. I mean, this is you have a track to run on. You know it's an issue. There's no education necessary. You're implementing.
And yeah, I think, one of the things is to see that there are problems, or to name them. That's one thing. But then to actually come up with tangible results for change and actions, as I said, it requires facts, because all of these things sounds very touchy-feely, wooey, yeah, like San Francisco, Woodstock, and nobody cares if it's touchy-feely stuff. But I tell you, the business case has been established a long time ago.
Pardon me.
Not only for diversity, equity, and inclusion, also for partner career support and intercultural training. These things make complete business sense.
Yeah.
Still, they're not understood. And a lot of people think when I talk about intercultural training, oh, that's how you learn when you learn how to give the business card correctly in Japan. But unfortunately, these, like, let's say, prejudice, they just stick around, they keep, and we need to move forward on these tangible, less, let's say, compliance-driven topics, and more, like the quality topics of global mobility. So
let's sum up as we come to a close in the next couple of minutes here. What should the headline be for this broadcast?
Okay, I've just started a series called Why We Need to Push for Female and Minority Talent in Global Mobility. And I think this is what we're talking about here.
And everything that goes with that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Okay, good. Well, I think we've got it. Now, I welcome you to use this topic as a springboard or as part of your upcoming conference presentations, LA on June 21 and New York on June 28.
I'm looking forward to it, Ed.
Great. Thank you, Angie Weinberger, globalpeopletransitions.com.
Thank you, Ed. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Ciao.